gooey, lovely names. And then the relationship went sideways.
And all the new species.
All the new species, dementia. And yes. Coffee's ready.
Historically, common names have just formed, and so they're very local. They span multiple species, but it feels like we're getting a little bit more organized with them. Now it's part of a description.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting one because it sort of flows into discussions we're having now as a country here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, which is the role of the Treaty of Waitangi and tangata whenua, tangata tereti. And I encountered this when I was knocking together this little book on coastal fishes. And they wanted te reo names. And yes, there were quite a few species that had te reo names. Some of them were iconic, tuna for eel, and there were a whole host of different names, many of which I suspect actually were applied to different ages and stages and sizes. But the really sad thing, as I was going through the dictionary, was there were some 170 names, possibly more, te reo names which just meant fish. Now, these names meant more than just fish. You know, they would have had quite specific attachments to this species, this sex, this time of the year. Don't eat it, it's lean, it's horrible. Eat it, it's nice and fat. You know, all those connotations, but they've all been lost when the cultures collided. There wasn't the sort of thinking we have an oral culture and we have a written culture, and one is technologically advanced and therefore is likely to subsume the other. Nobody thought to sit down and, right, we better catch this now because it's going to disappear if we're not careful. And this is what's happened. A lot of these names have disappeared, or the meaning and them where they're attached. So common names are important. In some cases, they can be more stable than the Latin.
They do move around a lot. But another thing that's worth pointing out is that they have different uses. So we are, when we're speaking taxonomically, it is a genetic lineage. It is a lineage of these animals. But that's just one way that we apply names. And like you say, it might be applied to what they're used for. It might be a seasonal thing. It might be a life stage. So I know we have a chat a lot. It's, if we're going to do it, we need to do it right and not sort of force square pegs into round holes, if that makes sense, because that we are then updating or reinforcing these meanings, and maybe we're distorting it when we do that, because it wasn't down to a genetic lineage. It was down to how this animal was used and where it was collected and when it was collected.
So it has with it, in its te reo name, there's a lot of Mātauranga Māori, there's a lot of traditional Māori knowledge, and those two have become disconnected now. And I don't know how you'd reconnect them. I don't know if it's even possible. But this is sort of part of the, I guess, aspirations of being a bicultural country, that Māori people will start to reconnect with their naming systems. And it'd be interesting to see in 100 years' time how many of the names that we use now, how many of those survive, and how many of the more bilingual usage or even replacement. So this is a discussion, and perhaps you'll be dealing with it more than I will be.
Yeah, it's not a quick and easy answer. It's not a quick copy paste replace kind of thing. The meanings behind the words and the usage of that naming is different.
Yes.
And so we need to make sure that we don't tape over that by making something oversimplified. By just swapping some names, we've lost actually that wider meaning of where that name was applied.
So there's one or two quite good websites about some interesting scientific names. John McCosker, who's an eel specialist, was telling me when he was out, a colleague of his who created a genus in honour of a very special lady friend. The species were Dulciata, and gooey, lovely names. And then the relationship went sideways.
And all the new species.
All the new species, dementia. And yes. These things are double-edged, I tell you.
Dirty laundry in public.
I know. Your patronyms are an interesting one. There's quite a push against them now because it's seen as being paternalistic. But if people have done the mahi, done the work, then it's nice to honour them.
It is, within the culture, it is a way of honouring someone who's done a great deal within this group, and it's sort of a mutual thing. But I do see how it looks externally, and it's weird to put a person's name on something in the natural world. But I think it makes sense within the culture of people who describe species.
Well, one group which is particularly rich in patronyms are the Antarctic notothenoids and the leparids and things like that. Zoarchids, there's a huge number there that are just named after people.
It seems to just be the way in Antarctica, because Don Walsh had a whole bay, I think, named after him, and our one of our managers here has a mountain, is it? Or
something like that. Yeah, and all the geological features have patronyms. And okay, some of the Antarctic explorers you can understand. Yeah, let's name that mountain after the Erebus and Terror. I mean, Mount Erebus was the expedition by James Ross into the Ross Sea. The sea itself is named after James Ross. So that struck me when we started getting a lot of Antarctic species. This awful lot of patronyms here. Surely more imagination than that.
Something a bit more descriptive, unless it looks like Ross. If you squint, that's kind of how it looks.
And tap the Admiral a bit more.